Hi everyone, I'm Carol Gable, your host of Men in Business, where every week I'm the lucky lady that gets to bring you not only men in business, but those men that are sharing their stories of inspiration and success. So welcome back again, and a big welcome to my guest, Tom Middleton and Don Jean. Welcome, guys.
Good, thank you for having us. Very nice.
Appreciate it, Carol.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Right.
So we've known each other for so many years,
Yes.
and it's just so nice to have you with me.
Well, thank you for inviting us, like I said, and thank you for your audience to have us too.
I'm sharing you with my audience,
Oh,
so I want to.
very nice.
I want you to tell them just a little bit about yourselves. Don't give away, the whole shebang.
Okay. Well, like Carol mentioned, my name is Tom Middleton. I'm from New Jersey. I born and raised. I went to high school at St. Benedict's Prep in Newark. I went to college at St. Bonaventure University. I'm in the Hall of Fame for baseball at St. Bonaventure. From there, I went into the Marine Corps. I was an officer in the Marine Corps. And when I came out, after 5 years, I started to work with Ingersoll Rand. I was a vice president of strategic sourcing with Ingersoll Rand. I also consulted with Deloitte Consulting in the purchasing strategic sourcing area. Married, 3 children, and 5 grandkids. So
Wow.
that's.
Well, thank you for your service, all of your
Okay.
service there.
Thank you.
And Don?
I was born in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, so I'm a Jersey boy, and went off to college at Cornell University, where I earned my Bachelor of Science and my MBA. Played some football and baseball at Cornell.
Hall of Fame.
And
Hall of Famers I have
right,
here.
that's right.
made it into the Hall of
Cornell.
Fame at Cornell, and had a free agent tryout with the Washington Redskins, but wasn't quite fast enough, and went on to work for Tom for many years. He hired me into Ingersoll Rand, and spent many years with him in the world of purchasing, and rose to the senior executive for purchasing for Ingersoll Rand globally, and then later on went to the BOC Industrial Gases Group and ran their North American supply chain supply management process.
Pretty impressive, you two.
I am married 45 years and,
Wow.
and 2 children.
Pretty impressive.
yeah.
So I met both of you when I was with the State Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
And we were working on a product that both of you developed based on all of the experience that you both have. And I was extremely impressed with that. And then through the years, we developed our relationship. And here we are.
Yes.
We're going to talk
Yeah.
about Focused
Fish
Buyer.
Right.
So I know what provoked both of you to come together and create this amazing online platform. Maybe you could share, the genesis of this whole transition
Sure,
for both of you.
Be happy to. Don and I, not only business partners, but we're also the best of friends. We've known each other for years, and our extensive background in procurement all over the world and whatever. And
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
Explain to them procurement.
Procurement is basically the professional buying of all goods and services.
Thank you.
Okay, and anyway, Don and I, with our background, we got together several years ago, and we said we have all of this functional knowledge about purchasing and professionalism and this type of thing, and we always wanted to give back to our profession. And the holy grail for us when we were practicing was to get rid of all the paper all over the place. And so when we got together several years, it was the advent of the cloud computing, the latest technology. So basically what we did is we took all of our functional knowledge with the latest technology, put it all together, and we now have a patented business process system, Focused Buyer.
Focused Buyer.
Focused Buyer, yes.
And both Tom and I had spent many years implementing software, major what they call ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning software, or MRP, which is Materials Requirements Planning software, and straight purchasing software, warehousing software. So we had an idea of how complicated those packages were and how difficult they were for people to use. So we decided to create something that was easy to use and avoided all of the complications. And we went to lunch one day, spent 3 or 4 hours, and started sketching out on napkins. And by the end of the 3 or 4 hours, the restaurant had no more napkins left.
Right. Right. So what we developed was something that was extremely comprehensive, yet very flexible. So, which is a big advantage, and it's very easy to use. Just a few applications, you do things several times, and it becomes second nature.
Okay.
And the fact that we have templates and whatever, that adds to facilitating the use of it.
So supply chain. Give an example.
Well, supply chain in its finest definition is from customer's customer through to supplier's supplier. And it encompasses all of the aspects of spending money for goods and services through all of those different functions and different companies, different businesses to fulfill an end use. And it's really gets complicated. There are lots of aspects that circle around the purchasing world in each one of those entities in the supply chain. And my view is that it's competitive supply chains are the supply chains that win business in this marketplace.
So when we talk about money, and we talk about selling, and we talk about buying, you know, all of us have a different idea of what that means, right? But we know in business that it's really, really important to be a better buyer, correct?
Yes, you can be a shopper or you
Right.
can be a buyer.
Right.
A shopper is someone, as Tom has often mentioned, that has purchased something, not too worried about the price, just wants to get whatever they need. Where a professional purchasing person is looking at all aspects, not only the price, but the quality, the value.
The value,
and
total cost,
yeah.
whatever, yes.
Making sure it's going to show up when and where the good or service is needed. So that's really about spending money professionally and spending money wisely. And in any company, the cost of goods sold, the purchasing cost is a huge percentage of it. It depends on the type of business, whether it's a wholesaler who's buying and reselling, or if it's a manufacturer. But basically, the purchase cost of goods and services is usually a major component of the cost of goods sold.
Right. And I'm sure there's a lot of business people in your audience, and everybody knows that in order to sustain your business, you have to make a profit. If you don't make a profit, unfortunately, you won't be around that long, okay? And a lot of times, too, small, mid-sized businesses in particular pay an awful lot of attention to sales and the top line, which is important, but you can't do that at the expense of not paying attention to what your costs are.
Right.
Basically, it's your revenue minus your cost is the profit. So the cost a lot of times can present a lot of opportunity to enhance your profitability. So,
And when you think about it, everything's really a purchase. So if you look at a business, whether you're buying a product that goes into a product, or you're buying a service that helps you with making the product, or you're purchasing labor, all of your labor is purchase costs. So when you look at everything that you do in business, you're really spending a lot of money on just about everything to support your business.
So who is your target audience?
well, what's unique about our system is that our system is applicable to a large Fortune 500 company, middle companies, small companies, or whatever. And we also, consumers can use our system for major purchases, such as remodeling your home
Big
or doing
deck
big,
or
yes, okay,
renovation.
Right.
yes. Also, and Don will probably speak a little bit more about this, is we're seeing an opportunity in education and training, where students, for example, both college, high school, wherever, trade schools, can get an appreciation for business by using our system. And they can actually role play as a buyer, a seller, marketing, financial control, or whatever. So it's extremely flexible,
Yeah.
like I mentioned before. Very comprehensive, but very flexible also.
I want to talk more about that later. We'll talk about how this is not taught in the schools,
Right.
how
Right.
to buy properly, and it's a big part of business. So,
Right.
but let's go into the technology a little bit, without,
Getting into the
too
weeds.
technical,
Right.
the general premise of it. So we talk a little bit about the targeted audience, how, the catalyst for it. So give, the audience an idea of what this technology is like.
So we're an internet-based business. It's www.FocusedBuyer.com, and it's known as software as a service. So anyone can go onto the website, register, and begin having a full-blown, what I call turnkey purchasing process at their fingertips. And it's very interesting from a standpoint of how easy it is to use and how inexpensive it is to use. So talking about the markets, in a small, medium-sized business, they really can't afford complicated, expensive systems. And no one's really developed a lower-end system that does everything that needs to be done, but doesn't cost that much. So that's what we've tried to do.
And another important aspect that you may want to allude to is how safe and secure the system is. And in today's time, it's very, very important.
That's very dear to my heart, being involved in risk management and cybersecurity, anything that's online,
Right.
or, dealing with money. There's so many temptations, right?
Not only that, Carol, but even within your organization, you want to prevent, fraud or embezzlement or whatever, okay? And like Don always says, it's in the purchase to pay area where the majority of this happens.
Right,
and it
right.
can happen for good people. You can have good people that unfortunate things happen. They decide to, well, I'll just take some money out of the business and I'll pay it back.
Right,
But a
right.
lot of
Well-
times they get deeper and deeper, and so even your best employee, you don't want to make it easy for them to embezzle you.
Well, knowing, my background in politics and business, there's a lot of pay to play and
Right.
bribery and things like that.
Sure.
And I'm sure in the purchasing world, that's not so foreign, is it?
Yeah, there's about $200 billion of fraud every year in the United States
Wow.
alone. And it's often calculated at over $1 trillion or more worldwide. But when you look at the fraud in the United States, embezzlement and other illegalities, about 60% of it happens in the purchasing through payment process. In fact, as we're talking now, a business owner somewhere has probably been cheated or embezzled out of money through some type of purchasing collusion.
And how long does it take before they really find out?
Well, it can take years. We had a scenario where we had a company, a large printing company, who was asked to trial the software in our alpha release mode, and we talked to the owner of the company, and it was a multi-million-dollar company, and they thought about it, and the owner said, "No, I'm okay. I have an employee. She's been with me 25 years, and I trust her implicitly." And within 4 months of that discussion, that employee was charged with $600,000 of embezzlement that happened with collusion between her and suppliers. And,
Wow.
and so it can take years to find it because there's no way to track everything since there's no software. Our software is such that 100% of the data and content is captured and warehoused and can be analyzed, and 100% of it can be overviewed by supervisors or financial people.
Wow, that's huge.
Sure.
Right? That tracking mechanism
And
is
what
ginormous.
Don triggered something in my mind too, when he was talking about embezzlement and things of that nature. Also, it's important for systems or for companies to have a process or a system in place if they can't grow without technology in today's environment. And then the other thing for a small company that figures, well, I don't have the money to buy a business or whatever, whereas if they don't have a business in place and they have an employee that's been with them for 20 years or something like that, all of a sudden that employee decides to retire or to leave or whatever, well, all of that intellectual knowledge leaves with them.
Right.
So you have to have a system in place, and this is what FocusedBuyer does also. What we've done is we've brought technology heretofore that was not available to small and mid-sized companies. So this, in a way, is our passion, is to level the playing field bring it down to where people can afford it, use it, and whatever. So,
one of the other markets is for nonprofits. Nonprofits can use it, very, very helpful to keeping track of what they expend on for goods and services. And for large corporations usually have an issue with what they call tail spend or indirect spend. This is spend, so it's not the stuff that goes into the product. It's not the components that go into the product. It's not the services that go into the product. But it's all the stuff like operating expenses that surround the product and making the product, and capital expense. And none of that is tracked
I
in
want
any
to stop
system.
you right there. And when we come back, we're going to have to take a quick break.
Okay.
But when we come back, I want to talk more about that, how FocusedBuyer is actually a great solution for some of these problems that you're talking about, the challenges. So we'll be right back. Thanks so much. Welcome back, everybody, to Men in Business. I'm delighted to have my two guests, Tom Middleton and Don Jean from FocusedBuyer.
right.
Welcome back.
Again, thanks for having us here.
This is such a great conversation. I mean, you know, all businesses want to be more efficient. They have so many problems with their bottom line.
They'd
There are
like to
so
grow.
many
Yes,
problems,
yeah.
you know, and especially the small to medium-sized ones that do not have the resources that, you know, the larger companies have. So you both have put in place an amazing online platform, FocusedBuyer. So when we left the last part of the show, we were talking about challenges and operations and expenses. So let's continue that conversation and why FocusedBuyer would be such an amazing resource for just about any business.
Well, we talked briefly about companies not having data, how it's very difficult for them to capture their data. You know, it's in somebody's computer, it's in somebody's filing cabinet, it's somebody's desk. You know, it can be anywhere, and in some functional department somewhere. Our system is such that it's all the data for purchasing expenditures is captured in one place, and it's warehoused there, and it can be analyzed there. We have extract files where you can pull out the information and analyze it by category, by spend amount, by supplier, on and on and on.
One way to look at it, if I could, just a second, it's like an electronic file cabinet, where it's all digitized right there, like Don said, one location, and
It's great for accounting, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Well, the thing that's nice is that accounting always wants to have oversight of what's going on.
Right.
So one of the big problems in larger companies and corporations is they use a procurement card. It's known as a credit card or a procurement card. And they use it for a lot of different things to make it easier, because they don't want all their folks having to work with the sophisticated and complicated and expensive big system platforms.
Plus matching invoices and things like that.
And matching
right.
invoices.
We have it.
So with our system, you know, the procurement card can be used, and the policy and procedure can be that the employee cuts a quick purchase order contract, but instead of sending it to the supplier, because the supplier doesn't want it, they send it to accounting. So now when the credit card statement comes in, which just gives you high-level detail, accounting can go right to the what I call ghost purchase order and do a line-for-line comparison to make sure that's what they bought.
The other thing that's important along those lines too is that with these procurement cards, sometimes it makes it too easy for people to take advantage of it. Companies call it leakage, okay, where people are abusing the card for personal use or whatever. And some large corporations are willing to do that because, like we said, they don't need an army of people matching invoices and things like that. But the thing that with FocusedBuyer, like Don said, if he asked the employee just to put in 11 fields of information, it's going to discourage poor behavior. Because now they know that somebody is looking.
Right.
Okay, right. And they're going to think twice before they try to take advantage of it.
So every keystroke is captured, and that's really important.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, that's really important. So talk a little bit more about some other challenges. I know we did talk about fraud, embezzlement. We talked about, you know, the bottom line, expenses, and metrics, tracking, auditing. But there's so many other variables that come into play.
Well, lots of companies have a lot of decentralized plants and locations. And
Locations,
it's
yeah.
something called rogue spend, where people are in various plants or facilities are actually buying the same stuff, okay, but they're calling it something different. And it's not captured anywhere. So the company really doesn't know what they're buying on a particular item or service. So our system allows the rogue spend to be captured in a way where it's common among the plants. So then you can maybe negotiate a group contract or a corporate contract or something of that nature.
So more volume, same product,
Right.
so you get a
Yeah.
better deal.
Right.
Again, the better buyer.
Right.
And just to
philosophy.
elaborate a little bit about what Don said, is that there's organizations spread out, decentralized, where they cannot really identify all of the things that they have in inventory that are not related directly to the product.
You know,
So they
I've heard
can't even
this.
identify it. So
Right.
they can have one location buying something that another location has on their facility. So
I've heard this, believe it or not, with hospitals, that they don't really know where half the machines are. And I was bewildered, but you know, it
Yeah.
happens.
And then the other issue is that most companies face is in the searching for suppliers, what we call the request for bid,
Right,
request
big,
for proposal,
Yes.
request for quote, request for solicitation, because all different people are doing it. And there's no software that coordinates all that and manages the searching process. So FocusedBuyer takes care of all that in terms of capturing every keystroke for the request for proposal standpoint. So you can always go back and evaluate it. And as Tom likes to say, once we have put some information in FocusedBuyer.com, it's there forever, and you can recall it. So now if you have a really complicated request for proposal, you can call it back up, you can send it back out as is, or you can modify it in a matter of minutes.
One thing I want to point out is on the site, you have templates of, you know, requests for proposals, non-disclosures. How many
Oh, yeah.
companies really struggle? They need some type of a form that they need in place. And what you both have done, you know, I love the organization of it with all of the various templates, also with money that's being exchanged. So I know a bit about, you know, I'm a paralegal, so contract law I really
Sure,
enjoy.
yeah.
And we know there needs to be money, right? So you have all of the documents, the templates that oftentimes a business owner really needs at their fingertips, but then you have a payment structure as well.
Yeah, so lots of folks forget when they're doing a request for proposal or even creating a purchase order contract, they forget stuff, okay? It's not on purpose, it's just because there's so much to remember. So the templates are prompters for any employee who's using the site to make sure that they don't need to have that as part of either the request for proposal or the purchase order contract. And from the payment standpoint, we allow payments to be defined any way the buyer wants to define it to the seller. But we also have a process which we call, it's trademarked, it's called precious payment. And it's an escrow process where the buyer says, I want to use precious payment, and the seller says, okay, I'll accept that. And what happens is the buyer puts money in escrow into a third-party bank account. The seller knows it's there, so they know they're going to get paid if they do the job right. And the buyer can't get the money back unless they do their part as well.
That's terrific. How many times do we hear they took the money and ran,
Yeah.
right? But
Right.
here it is.
it's tied
Safe.
into the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the
and-
buyer knows that they're not going to release the money until they're satisfied with the goods or services,
That's
whatever they
incredible.
contract. Yeah.
And so many small businesses and even consumers buying big ticket items, they do not they have never created contracts because they've had no way to do it. Now they do. And if there's ever any kind of disagreements in the world between buyers and sellers, generally the buyer has signed the seller's contract, and I have nothing against sellers, okay,
No.
but it's a negotiable point. But now buyers have the opportunity to create their own purchase order contract. And if you do get into disputes and you have to go in a court of law, what's the first question the judge asks? show me what the contract says.
Right, of course.
Now the buyer can just go to FocusedBuyer.com and print out their contract and hand it to the judge.
How
And
convenient is that? And it's all in one place,
Yeah,
right?
right.
with the terms and conditions.
Right.
And then what's the second question the judge asks? The judge asks, well, tell me about the performance to both, that both parties had to the contract. And that's always been he said, she said type of a situation. But now we have a complete performance section that surrounds the contract that's interactive, 100% interactive between buyer and seller. So every aspect of fulfilling the performance must be captured. And now all the buyer has to do is print out the performance section of the contract and hand it to the judge and say,
That's terrific.
here's,
Oh, yeah.
here's what's going on with the contract
It gives
performance.
the protection, yes, so.
What I love too is that there is no certifications needed or registration with the state. You know, it's just very simple yet protected.
And one of the other issues is the diversity issue. Many companies need to expand their diversity purchases, and our site also, FocusedBuyer.com, helps facilitate that.
Yeah.
So we only have a few more minutes left, believe it or not. We could go on for
Oh,
about another
we just scratched the
hours.
surface.
How many
yeah, right.
years have we talked about this?
Just listening to Don, I mean, it's triggering so many more things in my mind too.
Right? We didn't
Yeah.
speak about educating the students at the
Right.
universities. You know, that's a very important part of what you do, becoming part of a curriculum. So if there are universities out there or educators that are interested in taking something like this
It's
into
a
the
life
classroom.
learning thing
Yeah.
because they spend their money regardless of where they work. They're going to have their
Yeah.
own funds,
Yeah.
and this will enable them to, do it.
If you challenge a student, you say to the student, were you taught how to spend money professionally or wisely in college? They always say no or not really. So our site allows for real-time role-playing between buyers and sellers, functional colleagues, supervision, and financial oversight. And collectively, the students can learn all about the procurement
great.
to pay
And people are
process.
really just shoppers now, point and click
Oh,
society.
yeah.
Okay, this will
Amazon,
enable
click
them
it,
to,
right?
this will enable them to be more of
I agree.
a professional buyer.
So
Is there-
part of our discussion was that you would give a complimentary demo
Yes.
to our audience here at RVN TV, and I really appreciate you doing that. So
Be pleased. to do
anybody that would be interested in learning more about this online platform, let them know.
We're sincerely interested in our user success. So anything we can do to make you, our user, successful, that's what Don and I are here for.
So again, the site is www.focusedbuyer.com.
FOCUSED.
Right,
dot
FOCUSED
buyer.
buyer.com.
.com.
And my email is don@focusedbuyer.com. And
Easy.
my phone number is 908-265-9136.
Say your number one more time.
908-265-9136.
Perfect. I want to thank both of you for
Oh,
being
thank you
here.
for having
And
us.
thanks,
yeah.
Carol, again. It's
Right.
great talking. I mean, we love this stuff, right?
Yes,
Yeah, right.
we do. So come back
They did
again with all the connections that we made,
Okay,
and you can come on Business Connections.
all right.
Sounds
All
good.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to thank everybody for joining me. Carol Gable, I'm your host, Men in Business, every Monday at 6 p.m. right here on RVN TV. Thanks for joining all of us.
All right, Thank you.
or a magazine ad,